Clint Eastwood is a famous actor and filmmaker who started out poor and worked his way up to Hollywood. Steely stare and constant presence on screen come from a life full of challenges, from moving around a lot as a child to the psychological toll of early career struggles. Eastwood's journey was anything but easy. He had panic attacks, a terrible plane crash, and the heartbreaking loss of his father. But through all of these challenges, he built a legacy as one of cinema's most famous figures. Did Clint Eastwood's troubled past shape the legend he became? Watch until the end to find out the untold story. On May 31, 1930. Clint Eastwood was born at St. Francis Hospital in San Francisco. The staff were shocked by his 11-pound weight, which earned him the moniker Samson. Clinton Sr. and Ruth Nay Runner had a family tree with English, Scottish, Dutch, German, and Irish roots. Clint even had a Mayflower passenger in his family tree. Later, a younger sister named Jean Bernhard joined the family. Throughout the 1930s, Clint's dad had a hard time keeping a steady job. He tried being a salesman and even worked as a detective in San Francisco. It was a decade of constant moves for the Eastwoods, but by 1940, they had found stability in affluent Piedmont, California. Forget about those times during the Great Depression. Clint sometimes tells stories about how the Eastwoods lived well with a swimming pool and a country club membership. Unfortunately, school wasn't Clint's strong suit. He had to take summer classes to catch up because he was held back in Piedmont Junior High due to bad grades. His rebellious streak really flared up at Piedmont High School, where he got kicked out for writing an obscene message on the scoreboard and setting fire to a flaming effigy on the school lawn. Oakland Technical High gave him a new start, sort of. Teachers recognized a spark of brilliance in him and pushed him to join school plays. But Clint wasn't interested. He was more interested in fast cars, girls, and perfecting his hobbies like tennis and golf. Even if he could have been a good basketball player, Clint liked being Alan. He worked on car engines, learned how to fix planes, and got so good at the piano that a friend remembers his fingers bleeding from practice. But graduation is a big question mark. Records are fuzzy, and friends like Fritz think he just dropped out to have fun somewhere else. With his father moving to Seattle in early 1949, Clint found a temporary home with his buddy Harry Pendleton in Oakland. Then a stroke of luck, an invite to a Malibu party where he met film director Howard Hawks, a major turning point in his life. But before Hollywood, there was real work, logging. In Springfield, Oregon, a stint as a lifeguard after getting his Red Cross certification, and even playing ragtime piano in an Oakland bar. Talk about a wild start. Did raw talent and lucky breaks pave his path? Or was destiny guiding him all along? Keep watching. Things are about to get a whole lot more interesting. The Korean War drafted Clint Eastwood into the Army in 1951. But instead of battlefields, he landed at Fort Ord, California. His assignment? Swimming instructor. Safe gig, right? But fate has a way of shaking things up. September 30th, 1951. Hitched a ride back to base from Seattle. Turns out, it's a jinxed flight. Bad weather right off the bat. Then things get really bad. The plane's back door flies open. Clint rigs a makeshift fix, but the radios and oxygen system cut out. Talk about a nightmare scenario. Things really hit the fan when the fuel runs dry. Lost in the fog miles from the California coast, the pilot has no choice but to ditch the plane. Sharks are a real threat here, but Clint and the pilot inflate rafts and desperately start paddling towards shore. The ocean fights them. Waves overturn Clint's raft, forcing him to swim a grueling 2-4 miles, depending on who's telling the tale. Here's where his Army gig becomes life or death. Remember that swimming instructor job? It might just be what gives him the edge to survive this. Exhausted and disoriented, Clint fights off hallucinations in the glowing water, but somehow he gets it to an RCA radio station, where he is chilly and astonished to find the pilot, who also survived, years later. Clint stars in Escape from Alcatraz, where he plays Frank Morris, a convict who bravely swims across the historic island jail to get away. The cold San Francisco Bay, art imitating life. It appears that Clint got the grit that makes his cinematic Escape so credible by avoiding death. But hey, the military life is all work. Clint has a side hustle at a sugar company to boost his measly $67 a month pay. Plus, there's that rumored romance with an officer's daughter. Good connections never hurt. Even then, a trip to Carmel sparks something in him. Someday, I like to live. Here his military buddies include guys like Richard Long and Martin Milner, future TV stars. The 1970s and early 1980s saw Clint Eastwood trade his spurs for a bad B and the dusty plains for city streets. This era introduced Dirty Harry, the iconic San Francisco cop who wasn't afraid to bend the rules to get his man. The theme of the rogue with a badge continued in films like Thunderbolt and Lightfoot and The Gauntlet, where the lines between morality and legality blurred. Eastwood also showed his comedic side with the Every Which Way films featuring his orangutan companion, Clyde. This era ended with the chilling Escape from Alcatraz, where Clint proved his acting prowess wasn't limited to heroes. He could play a desperate convict just as convincingly. While making the 1975 thriller The Eiger Sanction, tragedy struck the film crew. Experienced mountain climber David Knowles, working as a stunt double, was needed for a few more shots of a climbing sequence. He teamed up with fellow climber Mike Hoover to complete the task. They successfully obtained the footage, but disaster followed. An unexpected rock slide sent a boulder hurtling towards the men as they stood on a ledge. Mike Hoover was severely injured with a fracture while David Knowles tragically lost his life. A chilling detail. The horrific scene mirrored one the crew had filmed just days before. One of the surviving climbers described the shock, saying, "We flew up to that same location, and there was the scene that we had been faking for 2 days. Dave Knowles hanging dead on the end of the rope. It was unbelievable." Fantasy and reality come head-on. The news devastated Clint Eastwood. He felt responsible for the death and was overwhelmed by grief, nearly abandoning the entire project. However, his crew, understanding the inherent risks of filmmaking, urged him to continue, believing it was the best way to honor David Knowles' memory and dedication. The 1980s and early 1990s brought a shift in Eastwood's characters. They weren't just tough anymore, they were burdened. In Firefox, he played a pilot haunted by PTSD, while Tight RPP saw him as a cop tormented by the killer he pursues. Eastwood's characters battled not just external villains, but also their own inner demons. This theme continued in The Rookie, where his obsession with the case endangered those around him, and White Hunter, Black Heart, where a film director became fixated on an elephant hunt. Unforgiven was the best movie of this time. Clint went back to his Western roots, but this time, he played a haunted ex-outlaw dealing with his violent past. The 2000s and beyond brought us the grumpy Clint Eastwood we see in Space Cowboys as an old astronaut finally getting his long-awaited chance to travel to space. In Bloodwork, he's a retired profiler whose health problems get in the way of his hunt for a killer. But Eastwood really reached peak Coodan status in movies like $1 Million Baby, where he plays a reluctant boxing trainer, and Gran Torino, where a racist veteran finds redemption in an unexpected way. Macho is still about the grumpy old man, but this time, he's a weathered horseman traveling across rural Mexico. Clint Eastwood's personal life is as dramatic as any movie he has directed. His first marriage to Maggie Johnson in 1953 seemed to show that he wanted stability. At first, Eastwood was hesitant to settle down, but he did. However, the domestic bliss soon faded, and restlessness set in. Extramarital affairs became a recurring theme. The first consequence of this philandering lifestyle was a daughter, Lori Murray, born from a secret affair and placed for adoption without Eastwood's knowledge. Years later, another affair resulted in the birth of Kimberly L. Despite Maggie's knowledge of these transgressions, the couple remained together for a time, even welcoming their own children, Kyle and Allison, into the world. However, the cracks in the facade were growing wider. By 1979, reports about Eastwood's relationship with co-star Sandra Locke were spreading, which led to the couple's final breakup. Eastwood's love decisions had effects that went far beyond the headlines. Kimber Eastwood's relationship with her Father has been a source of conflicting narratives. At times, she's described a strong bond, while on other occasions she's spoken of feeling neglected and frustrated, even claiming to have pleaded for a closer relationship. The story of Lori Murray adds another layer of complexity to Eastwood's personal history. Adopted as a baby, Lori only discovered her biological father in the 1990s through a private investigator. While Eastwood welcomed her after she reached out, it remains unclear whether he ever actively searched for her or simply never knew of her existence before her revelation. Eastwood's affair with stuntwoman Roxanne Tunis began on the set of Rawhide. It lasted a reported 14 years and resulted in daughter Kimber. Though Eastwood claims he initially didn't know she was his, this pattern of keeping his children a secret would repeat itself later. Sandra Locke entered the picture in 1972. Though Eastwood was still with Johnson, and Locke with her childhood friend, in a platonic marriage. Their on-set chemistry in The Outlaw Josie Wales turned into a passionate but tumultuous relationship. Locke alleged that Eastwood, against his desires, pressured her into having abortions and a two-ball ligation. This toxic dynamic lasted a decade and ended in ugly lawsuits claiming fraud and broken promises on Eastwood's part. While Locke was still in the picture, Eastwood and flight attendant Jaislyn Reeves had a brief affair that led to the birth of two children. Scott and Catherine met around the same time as actress Frances Pfizer. It was love at first sight for her, even though Locke was there. They started a happy romance that led to the birth of their daughter Francesca. But Eastwood had secret children with Reeves, and the stress of past affairs and paparazzi photos hinted at infidelity. Eventually, this relationship fell apart as news anchor Dina Ruiz caught Eastwood's eye in 1992. Their whirlwind romance led to marriage in 1996 and the birth of their daughter Morgan. After this, things seemed to calm down for Eastwood, but a reality show featuring Dina clashed with his private nature. Things spiraled as Dina sought support from old friend Scott Pfizer, while Eastwood began dating his ex-wife, Erica Tomlinson Fisher. In 2013, the marriage officially fell apart, but in 2015, Eastwood found love with hostess Christina Sandera. The couple has kept their relationship private, even going to events with Eastwood's exes and children, which shows that he has matured in his later years. Eastwood's health has been a source of speculation after not being seen publicly for over 450 days. Concerns grew. His last appearance had been in February 2022 at the T Prom Golf Tournament, an event he usually enjoys and held near his home. Even his absence from the 2023 tournament, where his son Scott was competing, fueled the worry among those close to him. However, Eastwood put these rumors to rest last month with a rare appearance at Jane Goodall's conservationist event in his hometown of Carsmell by the Sea. He was seen smiling, chatting with Goodall, and appeared in good spirits. Photos of the 93-year-old legend show him looking healthy with longer hair, a full beard, and a casual yet stylish outfit. This marked a return to the public eye as he's even back behind the camera directing and producing The Courtroom drama Juror Number 2. He was spotted on the Georgia set last November, clearly engaged with the work.